Hey everybody, this is Jason from the Millie PM2 Para 3 Club. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, and I wanted to tell you a little bit about my Koenig Arius. So I think all of you know by now that I've had a couple Koenigs for the last few months, and I wanted to sort of give you an update on my experience with the Koenigs and what I've been doing, and a little bit more about one of the newer knives in my life, and that's this one. This is a Gen 3 Koenig Arius, and as a Generation 3, this is the first generation that has the weight relief inside the scales. So if you were to take this knife apart and look at the inside, you would find that there's actually milled out sections inside the scales to save weight, and that allows this knife to come in at a very low 4.9 ounces. That's right. So 4.9 ounces is going to make this knife lighter than a paramilitary tube with Flytanium scales, for example. Very, very lightweight. And even though it looks like a giant knife, it's actually not as big as it appears. So this knife came to me secondhand, and it's probably the one I carry the most, and I don't know why, but psychologically I find that a secondhand knife just doesn't have the same sort of exclusivity to it or royalty maybe as a knife that I purchased new. So getting it secondhand meant that it had, a couple snail trails on it here, and it had a couple other things going on. And you know what I found out? The reason that these are on here is because my wedding band touches the knife from time to time. Well, what am I going to do? I'm left-handed. I'm going to touch it, and I can't not touch my knife. So I've decided I don't care about that stuff. Don't care. One thing I did care about was the pivot. On a Koenig knife, the pivot is very, very interesting. It's made differently than most other pivots. We actually have a dimple rather than a button on this side of the pivot. And what I found was that the rim of the divot was actually quite rough, and it was probably caused by the knife being set down on things or bumping into things, and it actually had some teeth on it from the abrasion on that pivot. So what I did was I sent an email to Koenig and I said, hey, would it be possible to get a new pivot? And they said, absolutely, we'll send you a pivot. So I went to replace it, and you know what I did instead? I pulled the pivot out and I looked at it and I decided I would try to modify it. So I took it out in the garage and I attacked it a little bit with some sandpaper. And you know what I did? I knocked it down, and now I don't have a problem anymore. Why can't I get it to focus? Isn't that interesting about a camera? It'll never focus when you want it to. There we go. So you can see on the pivot, there's actually a little bit of a flat spot on the top. The way I did that was I took a piece of 400 grit sandpaper and I wrapped it around a block, and then I very lightly sanded the screw until I took all of the teeth out of it and smoothed it out. And then I used a buffing wheel, a little cotton buffing wheel that attaches to my cordless drill, and I put some buffing compound on it, and I just ran it for a minute until it was shiny and bright. Now I have myself a pivot that looks really great, and it doesn't catch my fingers the way that the stock pivots do. So I'm glad I have the other pivot. In the event I sell this knife, I'm definitely going to return it to factory new if I can. But I like the feel of this much more. It's just smoother to the touch, and I don't know, just me, I guess. Another modification I did to this knife is I sharpened it. I'm starting to get the feeling that Koenig guys don't normally sharpen their stuff, and I can prove it because they sell out in a moment, but I have found that the edge geometry is very peculiar. When I went to sharpen this knife, the angle was so wide, I believe it was about 27 degrees per side. So 27 DPS would be a phenomenal edge for a chopping knife or an axe. It is not really what you would want on a premium folder made out of M390 steel. Because this is phenomenally good steel, it can handle a low edge angle. So I decided to take it down to a 17 degree edge angle. And it took me a long time to do because for whatever reason, removing that much material was very, very difficult. I have not yet buffed it. I'm about halfway done with my process, but I've taken it to a 600 grit edge, and this thing cuts like a monster now. So very pleased to have this much sharper knife now. now when I carry this thing and I use it, I'm very, very pleased with how it chops. So I just said chop. I didn't mean chop. I think you guys know what I meant. I meant it's now a slicing machine. So that's it. I still love the knife as much as I did when I got it. I'm always impressed when I open it. The confident sound it makes as it snicks open is really just excellent. And I really have no complaints for the way the knife is made, how they make it, what they use to make it. Just really a well thought out design. So that's pretty much it for this guy. If I think of anything else on my Koenigs, I'll come back and tell you about it. Anyway, I'm Jason. I'm from the Millie Paramilitary 2 Para 3 Club. We're on Instagram and we're on Facebook. We're growing all the time, and I want you to know that I appreciate you. Thank you for watching the videos. Thank you for hitting the like button. Thank you for sharing with your friends. If you'd like to join us, down in the link below, you can find links to our Instagram and our Facebook page. We'd be happy to have you. So thanks for watching. Have a good night.